Spooky, spooky, snowy Sunday. How are we doing, everybody? It's your man, Sammy the Man McIntyre with Moving the Chains Podcast. It's your host. So how are we doing today? I hope we're doing well today on the snowy, spooky, kind of filled Sunday. We got games going on. College football was going on. It was rivalry week. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. And then I saw some stuff this weekend. I saw the Bears thoroughly, and I mean thoroughly, whipped Philadelphia's ass in their palace. I was wrong. And I went in that game wrong on that one. Here come the Irish, and got a resounding win last night in Palo Alto against Stanford. I'll touch on that game. I want to touch on more college football, but I'll kind of go periodically throughout the week. Texas A&M, Texas, Arch looks like the real deal. And then Georgia Tech in state. The hatred for those programs is immense. And then I wanted to touch on, I'll touch on the Egg Bowl and all that stuff. Wow, this weekend was crazy. Lane Kiffin's making his decision. I got my clock right here, 1:52. I believe he's already going to LSU. I don't know what to make of it. I'll give you guys my take tomorrow. You know, you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. You know, maybe that guy was right, what he said. So let's start with that. So Bears-Eagles played Black Friday. There was a bunch of games. Ole Miss, we had Mississippi State, Egg Bowl. I'll touch on that game tomorrow. I did watch the highlights this morning. Watched bits of it Friday. I saw the brawl that broke out. Oh my goodness. I mean, that brawl that broke out Friday, quarterback fumbles it for Ole Miss. They start swinging. It's rivalry week. You know tensions are high. The team that holds their composure the best wins those games usually. Mississippi State didn't. They don't have anything to play for. Ole Miss does. They got a spot in the playoff. So, lot to lose. Lot to not lose for Mississippi State. Lot to lose for Ole Miss had that brawl ensued. So, that was going on. But I want to start with the Bears-Eagles. Thoroughly, handily beat the Philadelphia Eagles, Chicago Bears in Philly, 24-15, but the score does not reflect that. They physically manhandled them. Ben Johnson outcoached Nick Sirianni from start to finish. Took him behind the woodset, beat him, and Kevin Palazzo and that whole Eagles staff got outcoached, outworked in that game. And let me start with this. So Ben Johnson was the offense coordinator for Detroit, this mastermind genius, and he got the Lions offense just at firing all cylinders. He's making a difference in this Bears team. And I'm seeing something that's different from these Bears coaches. I really thought Nagy did a nice job. 34-31. I know it, kind of went sour. He was trying to do some different things. Trying to bring the Chiefs stuff into Chicago. He didn't really have the pieces around it to make it work. But I will say he went 34-31, 2 playoff appearances. This is with Mitch Trubisky, mind you. When he had Aaron Rodgers and Matt Stafford in their primes. And Minnesota was well run. I don't know what more you wanted to ask. But he got you 34-31, then you fired him, then you've been on this cycle of crap. And for the Bears organization, they need some juice. They need some life. Chicago sports is dying. They should not be dying, thank you. But again, it comes back to ownership and, all that, this, that, and the third. But I will say this with Chicago Bears. I'm impressed, but not yet. If you split with Green Bay, maybe. But if you lose both those games to Green Bay, I can't still. Listen, I'm impressed by the Bears in terms of what they've done this year, how they've overcome stuff, the way that Ben Johnson holding guys accountable. Now, Bears have a great year, but can you sustain it long term? That's going to remain to be seen in Chicago. But at this moment, the Bears are the real deal. Now, Caleb drives me crazy. I've talked to guys that my dad had a little Christmas party last night. I was talking to some of his friends. I'm still not sold on Caleb, and I don't think I ever will. I just can't get out of my head, paint the nails. It's just my personal opinion. I just can't do it. Kind of like Ryan Williams at Alabama, and I'll touch on that game later this week too. He's a non-factor. If I'm a draft team, I'm not drafting that kid. He's too much in everything else. That's what I feel with Caleb. Now, this marriage, Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, long-term we'll see. But I think Caleb, as long as he just plays within the structure of the offense with Ben Johnson, who I think is turning into a Midwest version of Kyle Shanahan. I really do. He wants to run that ball 47 times and throw it. He wants to sling the pill, but when he needs to. Now, there's going to be certain games where it's not going to happen that way. Early in the year against the Bengals, it kind of happened that way. And Caleb played very well. I'm not saying Caleb can't be a good player, but he's a roller coaster ride. He really is. And sometimes I just got to come to terms with, he's going to complete 61% of passes. I just can't unsee what I'm seeing and just some of the nonsense that he creates. But Chicago is kind of a city that embraces that. They embraced Rodman. They embraced guys with a little cuckoo-ness as long as you're producing. And Caleb's producing. Now, I watched parts of that. I'll have to go back after this and go over the highlights of the whole Bear game because I worked and I was kind of in and out. But I was impressed with Ben Johnson. I can't say enough. He worked and outworked Vic Fangio, who that was the most rushing yards he'd given up since 2005, I believe, when he was in the defense coordinator spot in Houston, when they were pretty bad with Dom Capers. It was just a beatdown. It really was. They were getting guys off the ball. Philadelphia last 2 weeks have just been disappointed in their defensive line, how dominant it's been in the past. It doesn't look dominant right now. I mean, I'll touch on the Eagles in a second, but it's looking bad. It really is. And good news good job by the Bears. Short week, didn't phase. Ben Johnson brings this accountability, energy to the Bears that just, if you're a Bear fan, you should be happy right now. And I'm not trying to discount them. They're looking impressive. Caleb still drives me crazy, but good for the Bears. They got the win. And just got to be happy with Chicago. They really impressed me on Friday. That wasn't a pretty game by any means, but they looked impressive. So good for them. And I'm looking at these numbers through 11 games, 18 points a game in 2020, 24 on offense. This is through 11 games, 6.9 points of difference. This year, 25.6, close to 26 per game with points per game on offense. This is with the Ben Johnson effect. Midwest Kyle Shanahan. Yards per game, almost 299. Total yards, 298.9. We're getting technical here. 370, close to it. 71% difference in yards per game. That's with Ben Johnson. And then the explosive plays, big chunks of plays, 31 points of difference. 87 this year, most in the NFL. Only had 56 last year. That's the Ben Johnson effect. He's been fantastic. So, great win by the Bears. Short week. Fantastic win. Now gets down to nitty-gritty. You got the Packers twice. You still got the Lions. We'll see what happens down the stretch for Chicago. But if it keeps going like this, you're going to get the number. You're going to get a home playoff game. I don't think a lot of people, mainly those warm weather teams, want to go to Chicago when it's getting frigid and cold. Okay? So that's my take on the Bears. On the flip side of the Eagles, they are booing down the loser stream because it is bad right now in Philadelphia. It is embarrassing. I'm reading these numbers. 48-15 outscored in the last 6 quarters. They're producing points at a lower rate than the Saints and Jets. Remind you, Saints and Jets have a combined 4 wins on the year. Embarrassing. And they're booing their team at halftime despite being trailing by 7 points. It's embarrassing. And I don't have anybody to blame but the head coach, who still acts like a child, who just can't get out of his own way. He's a front runner. I've been critical of Nick Sirianni. Last year I was. They did win the Super Bowl, but it's a mess. And you got this quarterback. Something's off with Jalen. There's nothing around it. They've given him every keys to the kingdom. Great offensive line. Saquon Barkley. 2 stud receivers. Tight ends. And I'm left with that. And we can blame the offensive coordinator, but you gotta execute, man. And the play's not on. Everything's not aligned. Jalen Hurts goes bye-bye. And again, I come back to this. He needs to be more of a vocal leader. And my first order of business, I would get rid of A.J. Brown. I know he's a tank. I know he's a stud. This does not feel right in Philadelphia. Get rid of him. Bye-bye. He won the ring. It's time to move on. The Patriots did it with Randy Moss. It was working great for a little bit. They moved on. Bye-bye. Sayonara. Godspeed. See ya. It worked out. And I'm watching this. It just doesn't feel right. They're force-feeding him the ball early in the game to make him happy. Like, oh, yeah, everything's good between Jalen and I. It's really not. So you're tricking people. And I just feel like right now you got to get rid of AJ. But again, you gave him a lot of money. When he's on, he's on. When his head's right, he's not reading self-help books on the sideline. So I don't know what to make of the Eagles right now. Their offensive line's awful. It's not great. I know that's kind of been the talking point. It's not as dominant as it was last year. That's a big difference. So I just don't know what to make of the Eagles right now. Their defensive line that I think is dominant with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and all these boys, they're getting manhandled at the point of attack. I mean, the Bears, they had huge holes on Friday afternoon. I mean, they could have pretty much eaten cheesesteaks and had fun back there in the backfield. Their offensive line, because they were opening up holes as big as the Red Sea. So you got to look at the Eagles, and you got to look at coaching, man. Nick Sirianni, he's very coordinator dependent. He's not a scheme guy. So you better get some good coordinators in here. And I feel like Kevin Patullo's over his head. He's not it. There's some guys that have a feel for it, some guys don't. He just doesn't, it to me. So Philadelphia's kind of broken. They're still 8-4. The sky's not falling. But it's kind of alarming. Like, this feels like 2023 revisited all over again. 10-1, solid, circle the drain, get waxed first round. And then they might be back the following year like they did after the 23 season. They went to Super Bowl, won it, got great coaching, kick ass, bye. So that was just my take on that game. So that was my take on the NFL game. And then on the flip side, Notre Dame thoroughly whipped Stanford. Should have been expected. They were favored by 10. It felt larger than that. It was already 28-0. Notre Dame just continues to just thoroughly outbeat people, and they're doing that. The committee wants these style points. They're doing it, and you can't fault them for beating the crappy teams. They're playing the teams built on schedule. They're kicking ass. They're taking names, and they are doing a fantastic job running the ball. C.J. Carr looks fantastic. Can they win a natty? They can get in that dance, man. And if they get in that dance with that run game, with that team, watch out for Notre Dame, because it is fun to watch. The running back tandem, C.J. Carr, this offensive line's meshing. Marcus Freeman's perfect coach for Notre Dame. He just feels right, like Lou Holtz, like Brian Kelly early. It just feels like there was a lot of momentum in South Bend, and I'm here for it. I'm a Notre Dame guy. Fantastic. And Stanford, just respect the hell out of them as a program. They're falling hard times. Now, can they get the momentum back? We shall see. But I'm very impressed with Notre Dame. As a fan, don't mean to be a homer, but they look good. They look damn good. And they thoroughly beat the shit out of Stanford last night, which you should, in that game. And then the other game I want to touch on was Texas and Texas A&M and Texas, the Texas in-state rivalry the other night. That was right after the Egg Bowl on Friday afternoon. And let me tell you, Arch Manning's here to stay. He really is. And if he gets in the dance, Texas might be hard to beat, because the way they're playing, Arch Manning looks better. He looks like his grandpa. He really does. He's mobile more than I thought. I went like, all right, he can move. He's okay. But he's running like his grandpa. It is fantastic to watch. Steve Sarkisian, who I've been critical of, can get a little sloppy with his teams at times, doing stupid shit, slamming a guy in the ground and just doing stuff like that. Drives me crazy. But they thoroughly beat Texas A&M's ass the other night. Texas A&M had some moments, but I got to tell you, Texas looks really good. From where they were to now, huge jumps of improvement for Steve Sarkisian and his crew. And if Arch comes back next year and continues this momentum, he's going to be the top guy. He's going to be the top quarterback prospect we're going to be talking about. And I said before the year, I didn't want to hype the kid up. I know everybody did. But he looks good right now. He looks really good, really solid, flowing. And I just am impressed with Arch Manning with Texas. They're going to be okay. They're going to be in that dance in the college football playoff. On the flip side to A&M, I got to be honest. Their schedule was cupcake this year. Outside Notre Dame game, they had it easy this year. If they had played, I read this today on YouTube. I was watching the game highlights before I hopped on here. There's some comments like they didn't play Bama, they didn't play Ole Miss, they kind of easy this year. Fly under the radar and go this 11-0 streak until Friday night, obviously. But I'm watching now. I like Marcel Reed a lot. I think he's got to add 30 pounds of muscle. This guy can't, I watch him enough. I like him. I like he's a talent. But a lot of these SEC guys are just really small, really lean, slender. Like, I was watching the Colt game just before I hopped on here. My dad goes, Sauce Gardner's only 190 pounds, looks like a twig, but he's got long arms and he can cover people. Marcel Reed's very athletic, very dynamic, running, throwing. But, man, you speed his clock up, it is a different guy, like most quarterbacks. So I think he's going to come out next year. If I'm his agent, do not come out this year. Okay? It's just like Tyson's from Alabama. Do not come out this year. I still got my reservations about him. A little like this with Ty Simpson. So, same thing with Marcel Reed. Not quite sold yet. Got to get better. Got to go back in that weight room, hit the weights, because he needs to add some more muscle on if he wants to sustain this level of play at the next level. Great college player, but I don't know if he's well built for that NFL with those bodies and hits adding up over time. So that was my take on that game. And then, I thought after the game with Mike Elko getting kind of snarpy with the, not closing the door. So what? Don't be a sore loser, dude. Like, you had an easy schedule. You had it made this year. Don't be a sourpuss. Don't be a little candy ass. Get over it. That was my take on that game. And then last but not least, before I get you guys out of here, Georgia beat Georgia Tech again. I thought the post-game, handshake with Brent Key and Kirby Smart, great levels of respect for both those guys, the way they respect both those programs, even though it's a hatred in-state, Georgia Tech. It's probably proximity to like Duke and North Carolina. But the way that those last 2 years, they had that 8 overtime thriller last year. My God, it kept going on and on and on and on and on. And they had that game, and then you had what is now. And that was a barn burner that was kind of a slow death game on Friday afternoon. And Georgia just gets a lot of credit. Kirby Smart is one of the best coaches in college football. He deserves a ton of respect. Learned it from the best of Nick Saban. Sort of like what Dan Lanning's doing up in Oregon. He's learned from Kirby, and he's learned from Nick. So he knows what it takes to get inside the psychological warfare of football before the game's played. And I got to tell you, with Kirby, the way his teams play, they play physical, they play hard, they get fast. It's just fantastic. And they are a factory, not a fault of his own for taking over this rocket ship, because it was pretty good with Mark Richt, but it's taken to another level with Kirby. 2 natties. We obviously know about that pipeline that Georgia has. Ton of respect for Kirby. And I have a ton of respect for Georgia Tech. Brent Key's done a fantastic job. Haynes King plays like with this Brett Favre, fun-loving guy. Is he a pro quarterback? I don't know. But in college, it feels right like Diego Pavia. I'll touch on that game later, but it feels like that's the same thing I'm getting with Haynes King. The play's never over. Sometimes that's a detriment to him. But I'm watching this team with Georgia Tech. They're going to be there for a long time unless Brent Key leaves. Who knows? Maybe he might pull Lane Kiffin and leave in the middle of the night. Who knows? But I just was drawn away by that game, and Georgia Tech's had a good year. They had their moments. They kind of choked it away against Pitt in the ACC championship game last week, but great job by Georgia Tech. They had a great win against Clemson this year, upset them. They just had a really good year. In Georgia, they play Bama Saturday. I cannot wait. You better buckle your chin straps, because that's going to be a black and blue, physical kind of game. And I hope, and I'm pulling for Georgia to win. Alabama is too one-dimensional for me, and I just hope that that's going to be a great game, and it always has been. I know Alabama's owned Kirby lately, but I believe that Kirby, there's some oomph. There's okay, you beat us once, we're going to beat you this time. So I cannot wait for this Saturday. Those kind of games going on. Championship weekend. I can't wait. It's just this time of year. You got Christmas going on. Wham playing. Last Christmas. Absolute best Christmas song, by the way. Bangers playing. I can't wait. This just is when football gets great. It's snowing. It's cold. The elements. Let's rock and roll. So hope you guys are doing well on the spooky, snowy Sunday. Hope you guys are doing well. I got content throughout the week. Appreciate your guys' support. Adios. Godspeed.